Hare Krishna, everyone. This is acyuta-bhava from Nightlight Astrology, and today I'm making another Q&A episode. This one is coming from another really great question that was asked. If you have any questions you ever want to ask, feel free to email me info@nightlightastrology.com, and I'd be glad to try to, field your question and make hopefully a cool video in response. So this question goes like this: why Bhakti Yoga? If this is too personal, skip it. My approach for a long time has been all religions point to some truth, and I'm trying to find the overlaps and general ideas that seem most true. But I'm also aware that this leads me to a bland, generic kind of faith stew and nothing very specific I can get behind and act on. Kind of like with astrology, picking a lane has been hugely helpful, even if it isn't the only useful and accurate form of astrology. But every time I try to pick a religious lane, I get hung up on the details, like not eating mushrooms or something else I don't understand. I think my question is really, why this and not another belief system? And what do you do, if you do, struggle with some of the details? Thank you in advance for any insights. Another really great question. You guys have been asking such great questions. And, as my guru has taught me, it's been maybe one of the most valuable things that he's ever said, that he says very frequently, which is that, a sign of someone that is growing or is ready to grow or is about to grow on the spiritual path is the person who is managing to formulate really good questions. So even the fact that we have questions about faith, about God, about what's real, about the soul, about the best path to follow, this is such a good sign. In the innumerable forms of life that we can take in the cosmos, in the innumerable species of life that we can incarnate into, and the innumerable types of experiences that we can have, chasing forms of pleasure that are very fleeting and temporary, and we can do that so endlessly. It is exceedingly rare for a soul to sit down and sort of look around and go, what is this? Where am I? What's real? What's true? What's going on? And I really want to know. There's so many shiny things that we can go and get distracted by that, so it just all of this is just to say, first of all, whether I'm able to answer your question or not, or whether, I could convince you that Bhakti is the best or not, or anything like that, just know that I believe, and the Shastras certainly say, the yoga philosophy wisdom literature says that if you seek, you'll find. If you knock on the door, it'll be answered. Is this, and I'm of course pulling that from, the Bible as well. So just keep asking good questions, and don't think that not having answers is a sign of weakness in spiritual life, because first and foremost, it's a sign that you care, that you want to know, that you are being careful and thoughtful. And, inquiring like that will lead you to the teachers and teachings that, eventually will, take you in the right direction. So just keep it up. Don't let go of asking those questions. And also know that questions are, in life, spiritual life in Bhakti is not about getting the right answers so that we have the right knowledge that leads us to the right truth. And then that's enlightenment. That would be in Bhakti what we call jnana yoga, which means it's the pursuit of God through the acquisition of knowledge. We want to know what is true and what is real. And the closer we get to knowing what is true or real, we might imagine the more enlightened, or, the closer we'll be to the spiritual goal, whatever that might be. But in Bhakti, our goal isn't knowledge. Our goal is love. Our goal is intimacy, and our goal is relationship. So I always use this analogy. You've probably heard me use it before, but I'll use it again. Imagine in terms of looking for in spiritual evolution in Bhakti is basically like trying to cultivate love or intimacy with another human being. It's very similar in that when you're looking to cultivate love with another human being, you don't say, okay, sit down with me for tea, and I'm going to interview you, and I want to know factually everything there is to know about you. Give me your biography, write down all the facts of the stories, the important dates, times, experiences, etc. And then based on that and my knowledge of you, I will have achieved intimacy or love or closeness. It doesn't happen like that, does it? So in Bhakti, we say something very similar about God. You can have all the knowledge about reality and God that you want, but knowledge of God doesn't lead to love of God. Knowledge to God, well, knowledge, we shouldn't say that knowledge of God doesn't lead to love of God. It certainly could transform into love of God. But what we're saying is that knowledge of God isn't the goal here. We want to develop a relationship, a personal connection from one being to another. And the way that we cultivate that, there's a sense in which the study of the science of God is very, very important. Like we have to, spiritual science is very important to our spiritual lives. And it's true that different religious paths around the world offer different takes on the metaphysics, or maybe the different spiritual, the scientific dimension of spiritual life, the way that we explain it or map it out is different, and maybe constitutes different dimensions of God's character. Different traditions. Christianity offers us certain picture of God, certain theological truths about God. So it has a picture that a certain amount of knowledge and information that's correct, as you said, and Bhakti does too. As do other traditions. In Bhakti, for example, we say, in the Krishna consciousness community, we say, look, we validate and recognize any faith path that has as its central goal the loving communion with God. So in that sense, it's like the main, as my guru always says, the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. It's love of God. It's developing and cultivating a personal connection with God. That's what Bhakti is. All the rest is in some ways details. And any knowledge that you acquire, if it doesn't lead you in that direction or toward that goal, is superfluous. And we believe that that's true about any other spiritual scientific system out there, that if that knowledge is in service to cultivating a love of God, great. And if it's not leading us to that personal connection, then it's not so good. So I wanted to say all of that first as a general answer to your question. But here's the important thing, is that what is the role of questions from the standpoint of the goal of love? This is really important, because if you think about it, like go back to you're dating someone, and if you're going out on a date with someone and you're developing intimacy with them through having experiences with them, through serving them, through trying to make them happy, through, sort of some degree of chivalry and romance, and surprising one another, doing sweet things, holding hands, going for walks. So you're cultivating that through different experiences and different exchanges. That's at the center of Bhakti. But then, isn't it true that if I were going for, let's just say a walk in the neighborhood with, my wife when we were dating or something like that, isn't it true that as you're going for a walk that there's going to be questions that you ask each other? Well, the questions that we ask God, or that we ask about God and the way that God responds, what it's doing is it's not serving the purpose of objectively getting to know God, which then equals intimacy. No, it's that questions are a form of exchange. We can hold hands with people, and that's a form of exchange. We can also ask questions and talk to people and inquire, and their responses become the substance of intimacy as well. But the point is that with God, the number of questions we can ask God and the number of answers God can give. In other words, the potential for us to come to know God and for intimacy to be created with God through the process of asking questions is itself endless. You can keep asking questions of God as long as you want. It's like walking around a lake that has it has no end. You can keep walking in the most beautiful gardens of paradise, asking God all the questions you want. God will still have really interesting things to say, different responses to give, and you'll keep coming up with new questions. The point is, after a while, you're going to start realizing, wow, asking God questions is like this beautiful dimension of my relationship with God, which is that what makes it satisfying is the exchange that's taking place, not the knowledge that you come to. Oh, that is very satisfying, because there's no one who gives more interesting, in-depth, intelligent, truthful, beautiful answers than God. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, but at the end of the day, if you're walking around a lake in infinity, in eternity, and the ultimate bliss is love, then the questions and answers, no matter how beautiful and revelatory they are they're just going to be another part of the same intimacy and love. So for us, knowledge is like an emanation. Questions, answers, knowledge, those things are like the emanations of, or the symptoms of, love of God. But the love of God is what's at the core. For example, why are you asking questions? You know, why are you compelled? Listen to the language that you used. My approach for a long time has been all religions point to some truth, and I'm trying to find the overlaps and general ideas that seem most true. But I'm also aware that this leads me to a bland, generic kind of faith stew and nothing very specific I can get behind and act on. See, what are you saying that you want to do? I want to get behind something. I want to act on something. I would say that what's behind your questioning is the desire to connect with something, to have meaningful exchange, meaningful participation in life, in the universe. Of course, that's what we want religion and spirituality and spiritual community and spiritual science to deliver. That's what we want it to deliver, right? And that's the point of bhakti, is that by cultivating the relationship with God, one facet of that relationship is the inquiring, the intellectual, the knowledge, and the mind. That's a part of it. But that is a part of how we cultivate intimacy. Intimacy is the goal. So I'm kind of circumambulating your question a little bit, because to me, you're right that at a certain point, that there are, if you are searching on the level of knowledge for someone or some system to answer every single question and to leave no doubts left in your mind, then you're removing one of the most core ingredients to developing intimacy. God's not afraid of doubt. God, you know what I mean? If you can imagine that you're walking with your hand, holding Krishna's hand, walking around the lake in eternity, that, it's like the doubts that you may have, the questions that you may be concerned about, from the standpoint of holding Krishna's hand and asking him those questions and hearing his responses, that doubt serves the function of love and relating and relationship. So it's not a bad thing to have. But at the same time, if you say, Krishna, I won't hold your hand until I understand every single thing about you, I have all the truth in the world, and I have no suspicions and no doubts left, well, that's going to be frustrating, because what you're asking Krishna to do is cut out an ingredient of what you'll need to keep having an ongoing relationship with God and with the universe, which is your questioning heart. So, from my standpoint, questions are something that they go on, and we can't, any religion, any faith path that has God as its center should keep generating new questions in you, should keep providing new answers that inspire. That should be a part of it. And we're going to have a hard time finding a path if we, at the outset, we say, well, unless this is airtight and leaves no room for doubt, then I can't participate. I think that that's a non-starter for most people, that most people will never get out the door if that's the requirement. No one, human beings are not God. Human representations of religion and spirituality, although they may come from God and be given to us by God, they're still filtered through our own imperfections, through people and their own frailties and their own misconceptions and misunderstandings. Sometimes it's like a game of telephone. A good amount of the real stuff gets passed on, but sometimes misconceptions get passed on. And, we getting into spiritual life, we have to be willing to sort through those things as we participate. We can't say, well, I'm not going to participate until all of those things are sorted out. Because part of how the intimacy with God is generated is that we say, I'm in it for the relationship, and then I will let the relationship evolve along the lines of these experiences, these questions, these doubts, these sometimes human imperfections, and and so forth. So so for me, bhakti, the reason that bhakti, you said why bhakti, and now I'll try to answer that. For me, bhakti is appealing because to me, bhakti offered the clearest and most lucidly explained philosophy it's deeply satisfying intellectually to me in terms of why love of God is at the center, how it's cultivated, the spiritual science of its cultivation, and the picture of God, the soul, its relationship, why we're here, the goal of spiritual life is love of God. That those I'd never read such eloquent, beautiful philosophy, coming mostly from Srila Prabhupada, who was the founder acharya of the International Society of Krishna Consciousness, who brought bhakti to the West in the 1960s. He just had a way of encapsulating the teachings of bhakti that really, really spoke to me. But beyond that, the texts themselves that he was translating, they speak, they're just amazing. The Bhagavad Gita, the Srimad Bhagavatam, and other texts as well. They deliver, in my mind, the most comprehensive, in-depth, I've just unparalleled spiritual philosophy in my experience. So that was one of the things that did it for me. Do I understand all of it? Do I think that some of it sometimes needs to be adapted or like repackaged for the time and place and circumstance that we're in now? Yes. And is that always easy? No. And do I struggle with that sometimes? Sure. But the essence, and I think it's important that we be essence seekers. It's like Srila Prabhupada one time said, the flies like to land on like open sores and wounds and cuts, and the honeybees, they find the nectar and they bring it out. So it sounds like you're also an essence seeker in that you've looked for the essence of different traditions and faiths. I think we have to, if we want to eventually land on a path and have that path serve us and bring us closer to God, that we eventually have to say, look, the essence of this particular tradition or path really appeals to me, and so I'm going to be the bee who just tries to suck out the essence. And that's what I've tried to do. I have not found it always easy. I find practitioners that are sometimes more conservative than myself, or that, whose understanding I don't really like, or not, but I've found just as many teachers that really, really speak to me, and the essence of the practices and lifestyle has been, deeply, deeply appealing to me. And I've been able to focus on the essence and leave the rest behind. And my desire in this Bhakti channel is to help people also find the essence of Bhakti so that you can bring a very practical, everyday Bhakti into your life. Chant the names of God, have a little home altar, listen to some Krishna Katha talking about God, listen to some sacred music. Just keep that in your life every single day. Make the, bring Krishna into your home, and or let the message of Bhakti dovetail with another. I have many people who watch this channel who are Christians who find that Bhakti has a way of sort of helping them reconnect with the essence of Christianity, which is also love of God. But a lot of people leave Christianity because they don't feel like it's quite universal or broad enough. They leave like institutional Christianity. Bhakti is a way for many Christians to feel like they can come back home. So I believe that the essence of Bhakti, the essence of the practices of Bhakti, are very practical and easy. I don't get hung up on the don't eat this or don't do that. I do my best to live by the principles that are most commonsensical to me, right? And the others, I do my best to try to understand. And if they don't fully resonate with me, I keep my mind open that maybe they will in the future. And I don't live in any kind of like radical defiance about certain rules or principles that I don't fully resonate with. I just kind of let them be and go on. Just go on with the stuff that I can do. So rather than focus on don't eat this or don't eat that, I just say, look, I can vibe with being a vegetarian. That makes sense to me. I can vibe with not consuming intoxicants, and I can vibe with chanting God's names every day. And I just keep it like that, keep it simple. So, and I figure if I just keep doing that in time, if God wants to illuminate in my heart more nuanced details or rules or prescriptions and things like that, I'll just keep my heart open, and maybe in time some of those things will make sense. But it's not a big deal if you're in a faith practice, like not every single thing resonates or makes sense with you. If you have that high of a standard, you'll never get on a path, so that's how I see it. But at any rate, I feel like I was like wandering and sort of all over the place in this video more than usual. I try to be a little bit more concise and not so long-winded. So thank you for listening. If you have any other questions, I repeat things that my guru has said and my other teachers have said in the Bhakti path. there's a really good website called the Bhakti Community, and that is a great place to seek more connection and more good vital bhakti content, and lots of other resources. I haven't been doing my newsletter lately because I moved and I've been just trying to get everything back on track. But hopefully in the next couple of weeks, I will be offering bhakti content through my newsletter regularly again, give you guys more good resources. So stay tuned for more soon, and feel free to keep your questions coming. Hare Krishna. Bye.